Unconscious Mind, Self-Colonization through the Medium of Language. Our presenter tonight is beloved Kwesi Baako. And as we speak, we are live on Radio Culture, TV and radio. So without saying much, I'll invite the presenter, beloved, to take the stage and lead the presentation. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ras Kofi Asante. Give thanks for Ejuma Oyenina. Today is going to be an interesting discussion because even the very discussion we're going to have is going to be set against the backdrop of today's discussion. As the moderators already stated, the topic for today's discussion is language and the unconscious mind. Language as a self-colonizing tool. Now, first of all, we want to ask ourselves why somebody would like to colonize themselves. That also is something that we will hopefully explore in the course of the lecture. As usual, I would like for this to be more of a discussion than a lecture. However, being as the burden has been placed on me, I'll try to lead the discussion and have everybody else join in. Thank you very much for joining us again. Okay, let's start the discussion this way. What, first of all, is language? Because a language, what are we referring to? What constitutes language? Now, we have some definitions that we can go by. And one of them is that language is a universal set of, let me actually read verbatim. It says the principal method of human communication consisting of words used in a structured, conventional way and conveyed by speech, writing, or gesture. This is very loaded. Yeah, unpack it. Let's unpack this thing first of all, and then we will proceed from there. First of all, we established that it's a means for humans to communicate. There I say it's not just a human thing. Other creatures communicate also, but of course we are focusing on humans at this point. And it's first of all a method for human communication consisting of words, but it's not just words, because if I wanted to say Kofi is a boy and I say Kofi boy is there, right? It will not convey the meaning that I want it to convey. So there is a certain structure. It's conveyed through a certain structure, right? And then it can also be conveyed through gestures, meaning that language is not always spoken. Language can be conveyed through other means like gestures. And the most common thing that comes to mind is the smile. There are a few other examples. I'm a bit worried to use them because some of these may be culture specific. For instance, the thumbs up. If you give somebody the thumbs up in the West, it's like, oh yeah, all good, it's all right. If you're in Ghana, Accra, and you butt it a few more times, that's a problem. So, we are very conscious of these things, and we want to highlight the fact that, especially when it comes to gestures as language, it is culture specific, meaning that what may mean one thing in this culture may mean something completely different in another culture. The wave, for instance, if I wave, it's considered in some languages or in some cultures as bye-bye, see you, right? It could also be don't come near me in some cultures, right? So that's another example of being culture specific. Now, language is also defined as a system of communication used by a particular country or community. Now we see that we are moving from the universal definition. Now we're zeroing in on specific, culture-specific language. Now, if when we say that language is also a system of communication used by a particular country, that is kind of divergent from the first definition that we gave. Why do I say this? Now, you fit universal language, we are going to define certain things according to geography, according to the people who live here. They call this item intos. The people who live over there, they call it nyanchemboro. the people over there, they call it something else, right? So then we start seeing those divisions coming. I want to build this background because I want to show how important language really is. I have worked as an interpreter in immigration court, and you don't see anywhere else where language is actually more important than that. Because you see somebody standing on trial who is about to be sent home, right? And then they are saying something that you have to convey to somebody who's going to make a decision as to whether he stays or not. Do you realize that at that point, that person's future is in your hands? At that point. Because if the person says something and you don't convey it properly, or you even convey it without the proper body language or the proper tone, you may end up doing disaster for this person. I'll give you another example at the risk of being too particular. But I was working on a case like that in New York. And then there was this witness who kept saying things that if I interpreted it directly, it would convey the wrong meaning. And as a professional interpreter, you're not supposed to intervene in any way whatsoever. You just have to hear what you say, pass it on. Hear what you say, pass it on the other way. That's what you have to do. But thankfully, this was a pre-trial, it was pre-trial. So I could, on my own terms, bend the rules a little bit and tell the people who were handling the case, I said, listen, in Ghana, for instance, you question this person about insurance. How many people in Ghana have insurance? Right? So you're asking this man questions that he really does not understand. The answers he's giving you is not coming from an informed place. I told them that. And then they pulled back a little bit, re-strategized. And I can tell you some of the questions that came out of that came up in the actual trial in court. Language is very important, extremely important. This guy could have easily landed himself in trouble because he's being asked about tax evasion, insurance-based tax evasion, something he knew very little about, So you can say something and, hey, you've answered the question, but what does it mean further down the line? That's how important language is. Let's go on. We have overt language and we have covert language. There's certain language that is put out there as, okay, I need everybody to understand it. So I'll put it in the simplest terms for everybody to understand. Overt, right? And then we have the covert, which is enshrined in poetry, enshrined in flowery, enshrined in adages, enshrined in symbolism, imagery. For example, Akanfo Ebeka said, Numsu train ope. Drink water and wait for the Harmattan season. Only to convey a simple meaning like, be patient, right? But certain people, even according to status, are supposed to speak a certain way. Into kwa himfia, unti say dia, sabi, or any person catch us away Jimmy, or beka say away Jimmy. Or he will use some language which Dr. will break down small, and then you further down will break it down to mean say, okay, only person just say Jimmy, but he did not say that, right? So there's overt language, there's covert language. Now, the Akan language is perhaps the best example of this, even though I also have the feeling that most, if not all African languages will have this characteristic as well, that they want to say something, but they have another way of saying it. And that's not just African, to be honest with you. Even if you study English poetry, if you read Shakespeare had his own way of writing, which was not the way the ordinary person in England was speaking at the time, right? So I think it's probably a universal thing at that point. But the Akan language is full of that, and we do see many examples of that. We will come eventually to how it affects us or how we have to use it to our advantage as Rastafari, especially Rastafari, you're continental, so to speak. And this is not to draw any lines or anything like that. But truth of the matter is that we may process things differently from our stolen brothers and sisters. our brothers and sisters who were taken away may process things differently from how we process things. It's a fact. Let me give you an example. Back in the School of Performing Arts, there was this play called The Rape of the Ramatu Sisters. And it was a dance piece, actually, and it was done. And I remember attending the performance where there were some of our brothers and sisters from the West, visiting students, all of that in the audience. And there was a scene where they were demonstrating a rape. And to the Ghanaians, it was funny. People were laughing at that scene, right? Like, oh, look at what he's doing, ha, 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 ha. And to most of our brothers and sisters from the West, especially the sisters, it was nothing to laugh about at all. There was nothing funny about rape in whatsoever form. Rape was not a subject for any form of hilarity, period. So this is just to go to say that the way we process things, depending on our geography, depending on how we have been groomed, depending on how we have groomed ourselves, how we have colonized ourselves or liberated ourselves on the other end. How do we process things? How do people who live in the West process things? How does Professor Oponwadie, who is teaching people who do not come from his background, how does he convey messages to them? How many processes does it take for him to do that when he hears something else? When I'm in court listening to these people, when I'm listening to somebody who's speaking in Twi and then relaying it back in English, how many processes does it take me to do that? When I'm having an ordinary conversation in the supermarket, checking out, paying for my tomatoes at the cash register, how many processes does it take me to pay for my thing and go away? After living in the West for a long time, it becomes possibly fewer processes. But then you realize that as a non-native speaker of the language, it will take you some time to adapt, right? Because when someone is saying something, I'm listening, I'm processing, I'm interpreting, and I'm redelivering all at the same time. This is why Ghanaian or African students, especially Nigerian students these days, has been out there for a while. This is why they excel. Because Africans have to learn English as a second language. So if they're able to keep pace with everybody else, they're actually superior. Because at the pace at which you are hearing the atom is a whatever or a molecule is whatever, and you are just hearing it and it's making sense to you, the Ghanaian has to process that. The African has to process that. Makes sense for him before he even or she even brings it out, right? So we have more processes in the interpretation stage, even for our personal use in everyday language. That's why I use the example of paying for my tomatoes at the cash register. I can actually do that without words. I can go and just nod at the lady and flash my card or whatever. But if you meet a person that happened to say something in Ghanaian, or whose name tag says Linda Samoa, they say, oh, that's my sister right there. I would love to have a word or two with her before, right? But then we are back to speaking Twi. So I'm like, hey, one process. What if I was speaking to somebody who was Spanish, of Spanish origin, that is? Or I hear these days they don't like to be referred to as of Spanish origin. Let me apologize for that. Somebody of any origin, let's say Asian, whoever, right? And then I have to tell them the same thing. I have to have that same discussion that I had about Kofi Adoma and somebody shooting in his face. A conversation that we had within 2 minutes of her checking out my thing and me paying for the thing. We had already had that discussion. Oh, yeah, Simon. Oh, yeah, Bompire man, and who better on why? If I was speaking to an Asian person, how many processes would I have had to go through for that same conversation within that same length of time, right? So then we realize that language is not a very simple thing. Now let's go to the colonizing part. Before that, however, let me also talk about language as a tool for negative and positive things. Let's all establish, or let's all agree, or if anybody disagrees, I'm sure they can bring it up later on. But we know that language is also the primary source of tribalism, for instance. Language is like the fuel that feeds tribalism, because apart from maybe my town, my clan, my family, whatever, no, the first thing they're looking for is this: what language do we speak? Oh, you can't Asante together. Oh, okay. And there's someone can't Asante, their own kind of home. Then maybe we can extend that. Recently, I heard one politician doing that. He said, oh, John Mahama is you're kind of saying, appointing too many northerners in Kumasi, in the Ashanti region. But one of them, at least he is fancy, so they are okay with that. Like that folly, you know. So language can have some negative impact like that, right? People based on that to think in a very closed-minded way and all of that. However, we can't leave it at that, because essentially language itself, no, it is something that evolves and adapts and readapts. The Akan people of Ghana, Akan is the most commonly spoken language. Chi is the most commonly spoken language in Ghana. So almost everybody will say speaks Chi, right? And because of that, most languages are actually borrowing words from Chi into their own diction and all of that. But make no mistake, this is not a one-way street. Chi also borrows from the languages that interact with it. I'll give you two quick examples. It is researched and believed that the word Ayiko Yadebia, everybody will say, oh, Ayiko, they say Chi. Ayiko, oh, Ayiko Yaye. To the point where we actually hear Ghana people saying, Aye Nyeko, Ayeko, but we think it's Chi. Truth of the matter is, it's actually Ghana and was borrowed into Chi. Aye, how do you say it? Let me. The Ghana people, please back me up when it gets there. But aye, something like that. Like we've won again. You've won again. That's what it's actually supposed to mean, right? Nigerians will say, well done, no, right? It's the same meaning. But in Ghana, we say ayeko, and we think it's Akan. It's not originally Akan. It was borrowed from the Akan, from the Ghana phrase, aye, meaning aye, something like that, meaning you've won again. You've done it again. Like, why are there? You look at you working hard, right? That's one example. Another example is the word Kuraba, which is the chamber pot. Some researchers believe that the word Kuraba was borrowed from the Dagbani language, right? And means something similar. Again, if there are any Dagbani speakers here, please back me up when it gets to Q&A. But these are examples. So that's not to say that Chi Krampona is the most commonly spoken language. No, it is necessarily colonizing the other languages around them. It is interacting with the other languages. And it is borrowing from it as much as it is lending to it as well. Okay, now let's come to the unconscious mind part of it. We know that after we were colonized by the British, not the British, by white people, basically, because it didn't start with the British, right? But we know that a small country, England, a small country by size, continues to reap dividends today through colonization of a large portion of the world, mostly through language also. Today, the much famed British Empire is no more. However, the language has prevailed, and today, English is the most commonly spoken language in the world. So that also shows you, again, how important language is. But beyond that, the English did not just colonize you and leave you to be. They attacked your language. They made it look bad versus theirs. How many of us, at least from my generation, remember going to school and being punished for speaking vernacular? Back in the day, that's someone of vernacular. all kinds of nonsense. About 6 lashes. Why then he spoke vernacular? He spoke his own language. He spoke his mother tongue. So they didn't leave you to be. They attacked your language. And why would they do that? It's the shortest cut to your psyche. Language is the shortest cut to your psyche. Because once you start thinking per their definitions, they don't have to do anything else to you again. Right? He who controls your language controls your thinking. Because interpretation is a vital part of language. Therefore, how you are made, right, to understand your own language. Language here, why would you? But how you are made to understand what your own language means is even more important than, I dare say, the language itself. Because if the language is telling you, say, Sankofa Yenchi, but you are being made to think, say, Sankofa Yenchi, then it's a huge problem. And that's exactly what I mean by it's perhaps more important than the language itself, right? How many generations did it take for us to accept that J.H. Henke's is the drink of choice for our venerated ancestors? Let's think about that, all of us, please. I've brought this thing to some very respected traditionalists, and I'm still not satisfied with the answers I get. How many generations did it take from the white man touching the coast of Ghana, Africa? Let's use Ghana as the small model of example, because we are the ones who use J.H. Henke. So let me say Ghana, right? But from the time that they got there, from the time that Kwame and Son realized that these guys be tricksters, so he asked the guys in Italy, you every day, they come here, they sweat, they smell. But today you come here, you go dress nice clothes, they come tell me, say, be representative of the king. Go observe the tithe. It comes in and goes back, and you do same. From that point, at what point did we accept that J.H. Henke's, Obroninsa, they've attacked your psyche? So now, Obroni, everything is better than yours. Let's go through the examples. The Atsantin toast, the toast na you use it dadana, a woho dadano. They bring some version which is supposed to be superior because it's resistant to disease, it's whatnot, and that becomes the Obroni there, a Greek there, right? Let's even bring it down to the arts and culture, something I don't stop mentioning anytime. How many of us haven't heard how many high life songs using the phrase "mi bro nie, mi bro ni, mi bro ni, mi bro nie, aye nye mesa, obibini bro nie"? Even when they are praising you for being obibini self, they add obroni on top of it to make it better. Are you with me? Like, this is what we're talking about. They attack your psyche, so they leave you alone. They don't even come back and say, hey, they leave you alone, you do the rest. In your music, you are referring to the pretty woman of your dreams as Obibini Broni. You are referring to your dear ones as Mi Broni. And this is why I mentioned that issue the other time, that sometimes when our brothers and sisters from the West get offended because they are called Obroni, we should look at that again. Because the people who are calling them Obroni are not really disrespecting them. If you go down to it, the truth of the matter is they're actually endearing them, unfortunately, by using the term Obroni, Broni, which is very, least said the better. But you get where I'm going with that, right? Because now you are learning your own language. You are interpreting your own language according to whatever standard they set for you. They came, they brought their schools, they brought their standards, everything. So now all of a sudden our name started changing, right? Akompon became a champon. Kuntu became Blankson. Like, the more your language sounds like what they think is acceptable. So Brodini to me, bold, yeah, it's easier, right? I in my job right now, I have to tell people my name every now and then, everything. And I say, my name is Kwesi. It's, oh, Kwesi. I said, no, Kwesi. And then I'll spell it for you. Kwesi. Oh, okay, all right. Thank you, Kwesi. Really? You know? So, and I had this discussion with a friend of mine. I was like, okay, when they do that, I just let it go. He said, no, don't let it go. Force them to pronounce your name, especially if they are returning customers. Force them to pronounce your name. Otherwise, you are Kwesi, not Kwesi. Won't that make sense? The same way they force us into schools, they force us into institutions to learn the languages and define things according to how they like, to the point where my beloved one became Mibroni, and the woman of my dreams became Bibini Broni, and the drink of choice for pouring to my ancestors became J.H. Hankies, and everything good and desirable became Obroni Dear. They did that remotely. They didn't come and tell you, say, oh, yes, sir. They tuned your mind to do that. That's what I'm trying to say. So language is very, very, very important in that sense. It's important that you know how to interpret your own language. And then there's terminology that is also brought down on us. And from this point, I'll, how many minutes have I spent? Yeah, I'll take about a little more time, and then I will like for everybody to join in as well. But we're looking at terminology also as part of the issue. And here, now let me bring our community as Rastafari in the case. As Ghanaian Rastafari, or as African Rastafari, or whatever, what is our language? Truth be told, the patois of Jamaica is one of the attracting factors to Rastafari for a lot of people in Africa. Fact. However, the more you become conscious of what Rastafari really is, you start to disengage from that. However, there's that terminology that remains as part of your initiation, quote unquote, right? That is hard to get rid of. I'm sure we can all attest to that. Even for the hardest core of us who are like, no, me the twin kwana mekao, even as Rastafari. And it gets to a point where sometimes the reasoning becomes a little bit absurd, because then again, it becomes a bit sectional and factional. And I think that, if not for anything, I don't see nothing wrong with African races speaking patois. Let me put that on record. I don't. Why? Because I don't see too many of our brothers and sisters having easy access to learn our languages. So if there's a language that we on our part can learn to communicate with them, why is it better for me to communicate with my Jamaican brother in English than in patois? Why? Somebody tell me. Patois, which is something that it's a survival language. The other day I had a little discussion with Emperor Wiro, Dr. Ponwadi, about this. And I was even, in my ignorance at the time, saying that patois was not a language. Doc educated me and corrected me that no, it is indeed a language. And it is a language of survival. So the language that contains words like poto poto, which I understand. The language which has words like, we can go on forever, which I understand in my native tongue, It's better for me to speak to my Jamaican brethren, to my Antiguan brethren, to my Barbados brethren in English or Dutch or French, rather than a language that they have created that I can learn and communicate in. That makes no sense to me. So I don't see nothing wrong with speaking patois. That's what I'm saying. And when I see people making fun of people that they can't speak patois or whatnot, that's nonsense. Because guess what? If I try to speak that Bani right now, I'm sure I'll find people who would at least laugh. Even though I pride myself in speaking some Ga, right? So it's just, by the by. But again, let's come back to the unconscious or the subconscious mind, imbibing things like terminology. I had a discussion back in Australia when I was in school with a coursemate of mine who was from Iran. And this sister, and I call her sister, very happily so, right? First of all, because she was the one person in the class who opened up to me immediately I was in the class. Like everybody's about their business, everybody's like whatever. She just opened up. And we became friends. And then, started talking everything. And then she drew my attention to something that I was like, whoa. She said, why do you people call bad things Babylon? Radio, culture. Why do you call things that are bad, things that are evil, Babylon? And it got me thinking. She said, my people in Iran, which is Babylon, never did anything to you Africans. We didn't enslave you. Why is the West that enslaved you Babylon and not England or British or Britain or whatever? Why? I was totally ashamed, I have to be honest with you, because I didn't have any answer for that. And it got me thinking, come to think of it, Britain, Holland, Belgium, all these people came and colonized our country, our beloved continent. See the things they did to the continent. Leopold, see the things he did in the Congo. See the lives we lost in that slavery that happened in our part of the world. See all of that. And then we blame Babylon because we have subconsciously imbibed a certain terminology based on a certain education. I don't want to go into the education part. So let's just agree. So it comes from somewhere, right? But truth of the matter is, if you really check it out, where we got that story from, tells us that the people enslaved Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar and all these people enslaved the children of Israel. Now we can extend the argument to say that yes, we can trace our ancestry to Israel or whatever, ancient Israel, that is, not, of course, we can make that argument. But beyond that, how about the Africa itself? Slavery na ade see na yen ye pese e kasa ye bone no. And on describe here, they are describing it say a Babylon. When Babylon never touched Africa, Babylon never sent nobody to come and cut people their hands off because they are not harvesting enough rubber. But as Rastafari, that's our terminology. So even as races, sometimes we find ourselves operating from a subconscious or an unconscious point. And it's about time we really think about these things. The words we use to describe things. This is why some races don't like using words like understand. They want to say overstand and all of that, right? But beyond that, the words that we have also grown accustomed to, like Babylon. Let's all think through it. Babylon. It's not on record to have done anything. The history, professors can correct me if I'm wrong here. But to my knowledge, to my little small knowledge that I have, Babylon was never a problem for I ancestors too much like that. like that. But here we are using that terminology and making it look like, okay, these are some terrible people. And say, okay, we don't call ourselves Babylon anymore. But truth of the matter is, if you refer to Babylon, you're referring to Iran. Greater Iran, that is. Right? So let's all go back and do our research. What did Iranians do wrong to Africans? Whereby, as races, our terminology for evil is Iran. Food for thought for all of us to think about. As I wrap up, I want to just say a few things about self-colonization. It's a choice. It is indeed a choice, because there is the opportunity for you to decide how you speak, right? There are people who, and I'll give this small example again. I like illustrating points. My daughter, came from Ghana to the United States when I came here first to go to school. She went to school, and in a short while, I heard her speaking or trying to speak like the kids in this place. I was disgusted at the beginning. I was like, what's that about? What would that make you know? Until somebody pointed to me and said, me, myself, my talking is changing small. And plus, for the kids, when they go to school, they're already facing issues with all manner of things, believe it or not. Even from some of our brothers and sisters, unfortunately. They have nicknames for them, they call them, they laugh at them, they laugh at how they speak, they quote lines from movies that they've seen with somebody speaking some heavy African accent, and they come up to them and they speak these lines and they want to stomp their feet and do all this nonsense. They're dealing with all of that. So as children, for some of them, the easiest way out really is to adapt the way they speak. Because then how can you tell? You know what I'm saying? I'm black like you. I dress like you. I'm in Nikes too. And jeans and everything. The only difference is that when I start speaking, I sound like Chaka Zulu, and you think that's funny. So what if I change and start sounding like Dr. Martin Luther King? It's even our children, Charlie, or smart power, if you ask me. Because who wants to be made fun of all the time, especially at that age? Who wants to go to school and have people stomping their feet around them? Who wants that? Who wants to go to school and have people calling them names? I was tempted to drop one, which is very unsavory, so I would not. But our children go through that. So for some of them, they feel like, okay, how do you say, I used to say nation when I was in Nigeria. How do you say it here again? Nation, Abi. Okay. Nation, Abi. Let's go, nation. Let's go. So that's it. But it's a choice, because sometimes you can decide that, okay, I am doing this because I have to survive, just like the example I gave you as kids. Or I am self-sufficient enough to stand my ground and to insist that my customers call me Kwesi, not Quincy. Right? Because the amount of time that you spend on the job is counted. But I'll spend a little bit of that to tell you that my name is Kwesi, not Quincy. But truth be told, there are some people that you can tune them the whole day, they will still say Quincy. If you're lucky, you might get crazy. And yes, I'm crazy, but it's a different type of crazy. So I'll force you to say Kwesi, not crazy. It's important. It's very, very important. Because if you don't define how you understand your own language, you have your language, but the language has been attacked. It's like a tree that has been attacked by a parasitic plant, right? You see one of these creeping plants. I saw one in my friend's backyard. He had planted passion fruit. You know how passion fruit grows? It finds the nearest tree and it climbs on it, and it just climbs up and just bears fruit. So it will find a tree strongly rooted in the ground and colonize it. So that tree is still whatever tree it was. It could be a neem tree, but it's bearing passion fruit. That's what has happened, right? We have our tree language, but in our tree, we still say me bro nie, aye nyamisa. We yatonyuma yesi me bro nie, aye nyamisa. So that unconscious mind, we have to disabuse ourselves from it. We have to move from a place of just having a language to determining what our language means and how we are going to speak our language. And while we are at it, since gestures and everything count, I want to also say that it's the entire culture. Can we also look at why we are pouring JH hankies to our ancestors departed? Even those that didn't used to drink alcohol when they are alive. I've been to family meetings where they are calling ancestors and they are pouring drinks. And I remember this man never used to drink alcohol, sir. But you're pouring him JH hankies. Anyhow, thank you very much for lending me your ears for today. This is where I want to bring the curtain down. I think this is a discussion that will be ongoing because when I was preparing for this, I realized that there were other areas that time would not allow me to explore. God willing, if there's more time further down the line and the Rastafari Council is more disposed to do so, I'm very happy to come back and do a follow-up for this subject. But I would want for us to spend the rest of the time taking other people's inputs as well. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Radio culture.
We give thanks for that powerful presentation. I trust we've all learned something new, or we all have things to say or comments or questions to ask. So at this stage, if any brother has a question, comment, we open the floor for conversations. Give thanks. Yes. Before that, also, I want your perspective on the fact that Luciano made a statement about how he sees Stonebwoy and his attempt to use patois as a language, and it looks like they are looking down on him. And from where I see it, it looks like most Africans who attempt to speak patois, a lot of the time our brothers look down on us because it's like we are not very articulate, or we don't sound like it's our mother tongue. They call us Jamaica wannabes for our attempt to want to speak patois. So, what do you say to that, my Lord?
Give thanks. Give enough thanks for that. So, as I have indicated earlier, and I will thank you for the opportunity to expand on that a little more, because again, there's this Jamaican comedian that I really love. His name is Oliver Samuels. Very funny character, and I used to be like logged in on his series and everything. I used to watch him a lot, and then I hear him. One of the episodes I was watching, and then he was a landlord, right? And he was upset because his tenants had made the house nasty or whatever. And then he said, said whatever he said, and then used the word poto poto. Poto. How many of us haven't heard poto poto before? And I was telling this thing to my Nigerian friend, and he said, oh, we also say poto poto in Nigeria. So the point I'm making is that if we are already connected with this, right? And remember, patois and pidgin are first cousins. I don't know how it happened. I'll let some of the professors explain that to us. But somehow it did happen that when you go to Jamaica and you say uno, it means you, plural. When you go to Nigeria and you say una, it means you, plural. Also, right? So we already have a base. When somebody is speaking patois, even if I don't understand every word he's saying, I understand the cracks of what he is saying for the most part. Same as pidgin. If you look at Africa, West Africa, how many countries speak pidgin? Everybody have their brand of pidgin. Sierra Leonean pidgin is very difficult to really understand and break down. Same as Liberian pidgin. But I hear them when they're speaking, based on that same structure on which our pidgin is based. Ghana pidgin, Nigeria pidgin are very close. Few, twists and turns here and there. But we already have that. And if we have on the continent, pidgin, which is a base for us, and then outside of the continent to connect us to our brothers and sisters, we can at least take that step to speak patois, which no matter how bad it is, I believe they also understand. I'm sure Luciano understood whatever it was Stonebwoy was saying. I believe he did. You see what I'm saying? So instead of going to learn the third language, going to learn English so that I can speak to my brother, the Jamaican, who maybe might not even understand some of the English words I'm using, crapo. So he also has to go and figure out what the heck I'm saying. Right? So we cut to the chase. And he in Jamaica, or he in Antigua, or he in the United States, or she in Barbados, or she in Guyana, or wherever, they don't have an easy access to learn Chi. Those who will learn, they have learned. They're doing it. This professor in Legon, he He's doing some amazing work. I forget his name, but some of the things he's doing, Charlie, next level things he's doing with the language. That guy speaks like how many African languages? Speaks fluent Tree. He can afford to do that. He's committed to do that. He has done that. But on the whole, right, with the propaganda that Babylon is pushing, that we sold our brothers and sisters into slavery, so they don't even want nothing to do with us. So that even learning the language is not even important to them. But I still want to debunk that. I still want to change that narrative. How do I do that? Is it easier for me to learn Patois and start speaking it no matter how bad it is, so that I can reach to my brothers and sisters on the other side? I think that is better. And I think it's nothing to be ashamed of. I think it's something that we should commend ourselves for doing. Say, Anya, we have taken the step to reach out and speak to our brothers and sisters on the other side, versus just leaving ourselves to just sit and depending on, again, the use of the English language to even determine how the narrative is put out there. When they say slavery, let me give you a classical example here. Slavery, they replaced it with slave trade. So how many of us still think of slavery as slave trade? What kind of trade did there where they come and take one people, go and sell them and make profit, and the other person, where was the trade? If there was any trade, it was only between them and the greedy people who collaborated with them. But these people didn't just collaborate with them, they were their unsigns. They were employed by them, so there was no trade. But they'll say slave trade. And if we don't make the move to speak a language that we all can understand, that for a start, at least, let's say, then we are leaving the narrative for people who will write history as slave trade, instead of learning Patois to tell our brothers and sisters that it was slavery, not slave trade. But if I have to use the colonizers' language to explain to them, it's a longer journey, I think. Give thanks, brother.
Radio culture.
If thanks, Ras. Please, any other comments, question, contribution? Yes, please, Prof.
Give thanks. Empire.
Konkaya. Konkaya.
I want to ask your permission to change the title of a presentation to Food for Thought. You've given us a whole lot of food for thought here, So, man, give thanks. But I want to comment on some of the things where you say. And I think that this presentation is very, very timely, because whether we are observing or not, I say for the past like a month or two, this issue of language has been seeping into the Ghanaian debate, or if I should put it that way, the Ghanaian conversation, with the idea that certain parts of Ghana should use certain languages because those languages are basically connected to, quote unquote, the owners of the land, which is something that is also questionable. But I like to go from our ancestors, and our ancestors never have any trouble with borrowing ideas, cultural practices, anything. As you pointed out, a kid who's born today, maybe in a Cree-speaking area, when they hear the word atu, today it is part of the Cree language, right? Today it is part of the Cree language, but atu did not originate as a Cree language,
as a Cree word.
As a Cree word, right? We look at even a word like sikai, which is knife, right? Sikai is not originally a Cree word; it's a Portuguese word. You know what I'm saying? Yes, indeed, right? So I'm giving these examples to show that even when it comes to language, and even beyond language, cultural practices. So, for instance, when we say right now today in Ghana, if you meet somebody, or even outside Ghana, you meet somebody from Ghana, what they tell you, say, my name is Kofi. trust me, that does not give you any information as to the ethnic background.
No, not at all. Exactly.
Because our ancestors had no problem with borrowing from each other, as you rightly point. And it's very sad to see that instead of building upon that for our present advancement and for our future, we are now talking about, oh, if you go to Volta region, the airport must say Wezo. And if you go to
Radio culture.
the airport must say, I think that is actually a very sad situation. That also speaks to the fact that our national consciousness is actually retrogressing as opposed to advancing, because we should feel free as a nation to understand that words can come from anywhere, just like our ancestors did, right? Nobody was sitting in like Kumasi or anything saying that I'm not going to allow Atu to come into my language because that's not where it originated from, right? And I'm sure more examples can be given in that regard. So I think that we should look at that, this whole language conversation, draw inspiration from our ancestors to answer questions related to that in the present, and also build upon it for our future. Same thing. I mean, this past week, Ghana won a huge landmark victory in terms of winning the intellectual property of Kente worldwide.
Oh, really?
Yes, indeed. So right now, nobody go fit reproduce any kind of cloth, any corner of the world and call it Kente. The intellectual property of that now belongs to Ghana, right? Which is huge, right? Now the question is, can somebody just say that just because Kente originated in certain areas, does that mean that other Ghanaians cannot use or work
or lay claim to it? Even lay claim to
it? Absolutely. I mean, look, one of the most beautiful things for me when I'm in Ghana in recent times is to be out on Fridays or on Sundays, right? Because on Friday is where Ghana Day. So everybody wears some African clothes to work, right? Everywhere you go, post office, bank, hotels, everywhere. Great. So am I going to say that, okay, because Ugu is originally from, let's say, hypothetically, Bolga. So because, I'm in Hohoi, I'm not going to wear Fugu. I mean, we have to really think about these things more critically than just to limit it to a land, so to speak. And this conversation goes much deeper than that. Recently, I saw some people making a case that there's a certain house of chiefs in Ghana, and the president of that house of chiefs was sitting on a chief stool which had Edinkra symbols on it. And along the lines of this whole conversation, they were saying that how come the chief has to sit on a stool that has Edinkra symbols on it? Because we're trying to make a case that Edinkra symbols did not originate with a particular ethnic group. So, this is where the thing is. This is why I'm saying that we are actually acting in opposition to our ancestors who had no trouble whatsoever in wearing any part of part of Ghana. No trouble whatsoever in using Edinkra symbols. Any part of Ghana, no trouble whatsoever in adopting the 7-day name of, originated by the accounts. But now, like I said, if you said somebody tell you they call Kofi, you can't say that just based on that name.
Not at all.
Because we have borrowed these things from each other, right? It's not a colonizing and a colonizer situation. It's a more of an interactive situation. It's a give and take situation, and which I think is a beautiful thing, and should be encouraged in terms of our national consciousness. We should have words from everywhere being integrated into our psyche, as you put it, and into our national consciousness. Now, I'm moving away from that a little bit. You know, the great John Henry Clark made a statement, which I always like to borrow. He said, you know, when colonizers came to Africa, they didn't just colonize just the politics. They also colonized information and by extension knowledge, right? In fact, they advanced what they thought was knowledge, which was mostly steeped in Western Eurocentric concepts, as opposed to what we refer today as indigenous knowledge, right? Now, in line with that, I think that the case you're making goes in hand with that. How are we looking at information? How are we looking at language? How are we looking at knowledge? And how does our indigenous forms of thought align with our language and our knowledge? And the fact of the matter is, colonization also has impacted our language and the way we think. So, for instance, I remember that some years ago, there was, those days they used to have these fairs at the trade fair site in Labadi.
Yes. Gifex and all those ones.
Gifex and Indutech and tourism and all those kind of things. So this exhibitor who was looking for ladies to come and be the ushers and customer service personnel in his time put an advert out in Daily Graphic and basically said, quote unquote, he was looking only for fair-skinned women.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. And the Ghanaian public turned the heat on him that he had to actually come back and rescind that situation. Now, why am I bringing this up? This is the extent to which we normalize this kind of Mibroni kind of nonsense. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
The fact that we even have a term, Mibroni, talks about how we are perceiving ourselves vis-a-vis the European.
Yep.
In other words, Mibroni, which means that among all the black people,
Radio, culture.
was closest to the white, and therefore you are superior in beauty and in everything else. That is highly problematic. In fact, I don't think that in this day and age, we should even allow any artist to put out any song like that without putting the heat on that kind of.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It should be unacceptable, just as they put a heat on the guy who sought fair-skinned women for his trade fair exhibition. Yes. So things food for thought, right? Now, one thing I want to quickly say before is the use of the word Babylon, which rightly spoke about. I think that it is more metaphorical than actual, and metaphorical in the sense that the dispersal of Africans throughout the world was seen as somehow analogous to how the so-called Israelites were dispersed.
Yeah.
Though that terminology came about as a result of that, not necessarily in relation to that we have anything against Iran. I don't think that, the young lady should be comforted in knowing that,
But Empire, I think that's exactly the problem though. Because why are we referring to an analogy rather than the real, right? You have suffered a more recent incident, if you can call it that, a more recent catastrophe of slavery. Why travel all the way back to go refer to an analogy when the slavery is right there? You know what I'm saying? That to me is where I think she's drawing our attention to.
Okay, I mean, I'm not against that as well. I think that's very true. But we also want to maybe I think that we could say, why not use a terminology from our own experience.
Yes.
As opposed to borrowing that.
Exactly.
Right? And that is a point to be made. But that is a direction that we can move towards, right? For real. But I think that the same thing even happens with the word Zion, right?
Exactly.
Which these days is been very abused.
Yes.
Even in terms of the way things are expressed.
Yes.
Somebody pass on and they say, oh, the person has moved to Zion. How did you know that? And how did that happen? You know what I'm saying? And where is this Zion? And this technology can also, create some kind of problems.
Basically, why Zion and not Afajato? Why?
Absolutely.
Does it have?
We can't have one African terminology. So, to buttress that point. But these are things that we, is food for thought. But give thanks.
Give enough thanks, Empire dog. So one quick listen though. The food for thought. Now I think that food be teased too. You know why? TZ somehow is. Can I say that Kumasi especially made TZ famous?
Oh, Rasta, this thing they talk. And this also goes back to the point where it makes it our ancestors had no problem.
That's the point I'm buttressing.
Yes.
Because they will bypass the fufu and the ampese and everything, and you go and see a lot. There's this place in Kumasi called Ghana, Guinea, Mali.
Radio culture.
If anybody wants advice on how to keep a generational business running, Ghana, Guinea, Mali is a good place to start. From before I was born, this business was there. I think it was from when Kwame Nkrumah was proposing the Ghana, Guinea, Mali idea that they set up that trouble. They started selling TZ. I believe till this day they are still selling TZ. Generations and generations, and they've kept the business running, right? But the point I'm making is that people who are Ashanti, who have been born and bred as Ashanti people, who have been fed with Kontomre and Mankani, somehow bypass that and go and queue up to buy food at Ghana, Guinea, Mali, right? We had no problem whatsoever integrating through the things that form our culture, the way we dress. Before we realized, we all started wearing the fugu same way. Before we realized, everybody's wearing the clothes too, right? Kente said, some people say it comes from Volta region, some people say it comes from where? Nina Kamubi. Fair enough, it's all within, and all of that. So, yeah, I think that these things are things that we can actually highlight to intensify our drive for unity. Because if you check it out, if you take the politician out of the equation, the person who wants to profit off of me and you speaking some different language, we actually love ourselves. Even outside of Ghana, I traveled to Nigeria. When I reached Nigeria, and you know what's funny? Now, this wasn't even the point I was going to make, but it flashed to my head. Empire, this same language matter. I went through Togo, I went through Benin, 2 countries that speak a different language from what I'm used to, could not communicate with anybody. I was advised to stay away from people. You know why? Because when the gendarme walk up to you and they say something and you can't respond, they take you for a criminal. This is how bad it is. This is the extent, right? So now I go to these 2 countries where I see people who look exactly like me, but I'm nervous as heck. I just want to get out of there. Now, once I get into Nigeria, I speak pidgin, they speak pidgin. It was like I was in Ghana. I went to the first kid I saw, I said, hey, where I go find Coca-Cola by? This was back in Legon. Where I go find Coca-Cola by? He just pointed the store over there for me like that. When they speak to every and anybody. And that shows you that even as one people, we can easily be disoriented by language. I traveled to a portion of Africa where I couldn't communicate with my brothers and sisters because they have been instructed in French and I have been instructed in English. So what if, this is the same Jamaican issue again, Rasputin, what if there was a language that I could learn to speak that the Togolese people will understand. I will happily learn and speak that, even if it's a bad rendition of it, right? Because at least when they ask me my name, I can tell them and they wouldn't mistake me for a criminal, as I was told, you know. So yeah, Empire, those are very, very good examples that you brought up, and give thanks, Father, for, you know.
Give thanks, and I want to buttress your point right quick that
yes,
even the pigeon, even the pigeon, Ghana pigeon, if you borrow from Nigeria pigeon, we if you borrow from other kinds of pigeons.
yes,
right? Like happens all the time. There are certain words in Ghana pigeon right now where we know say our uncles them where they came from
Nigeria, yes,
the deportation, the exodus,
yes,
they introduce those words into the Ghana pigeon. So
yes,
you know,
yes.
it kind of,
And until today, because of Nigerian movies and all of that, that continues going on. And can I quickly say, I have put out the hypothesis, needs to be proved, that the word Chale, UC or Ghana, and name tag crampo for Ghanaians now. I think it came from the Nigerian word Jare.
oh,
I think so.
okay.
I think so, and it's something I'm looking into. I've put it out there. I have a Nigerian friend who's helping me to look into that as well. Because just like you said, our brothers and sisters went to Nigeria, you know, and came back. I want to know what point in time we started using the word Chale. I want to see if it corresponds with that period of time. If it did, then I have a stronger point that the word Chale, which we don't seem to be able to place. People say, oh, it was when the what you call it, British people were calling all our ancestors or all our grandfathers Charlie. I don't think they call them Charlie. They call them worse names. They call them all kind of nonsense names. They didn't call them Charlie. I think it comes from the Nigerian term Jare, which if you fit into any time you use Charlie, it fits perfectly. Make we go Jare, make we go Charlie. You see what I'm saying? Anyhow, give thanks.
Radio, culture.
Yes, Rastafari.
Selassie.
Give thanks for the reasoning, man. Serious reasoning. My language is very important. Because right now, the way things they go, language is top of culture. It's the top of culture. Culture is very important to the language.
Mm-hmm.
The Babylon thing, make I take on the Babylon.
Please.
It's very interesting. Babylon.
Please.
Why we come and use Babylon so much like it did. Iraq, the university in Iraq right now. But I as to say, the more of the interpretation thing where you get into using Babylon so like it's current language, you know, but it's just an interpretation thing. When we have interpreted background, then yeah, Babylon makes sense instead in the sense that Israel was, like we say, dispersed by Babylon. Even that's when you're talking about Old Testament. That's the way we're talking about Old Testament days, you know. And then also it's Egypt. When we relate things that way, we also touch on Egypt in that same manner of disrespect, where we blame Egypt for enslaving Israel.
Yeah.
Egypt in that way.
Yeah, so very good example.
When then our Bobo brothers jump on Egypt, you keep saying Egypt said in some evil place, you know, but Egypt is right there in Africa, you see. So in that same way, indoctrination, where cause that, man, but we can be above that and know the people who are doing us wrong. It's Europe, especially United Kingdom, where they call United Kingdom, Britain. They do too much against us, and we must know that and address them directly, like that. Then, when you see these same UK people, when they use this English language on us, I hardly see any Englishman. There's hardly any of them left. Hardly. You don't see English people. You can see the Welsh. They tell you I'm Welsh background. They will tell you I'm Scottish. Irish is very proud Irish. Man. Loads. Almost everybody you go see here be Irish. English, no. I'm yet to come across an Englishman. And this is London, you know. Yeah. So it's just a language of these people where they call English. Because when they go check it out again, in India, monarchy, they come from Germany.
Yeah.
No.
And France.
Yeah, the name Winston, they just adopt them during the war against propaganda issues, you know. They call them Guza or something, you know. Yeah, having them original names of Germany. So the English people say, they finished. It's just a language you make.
Yeah.
Then interestingly, I've been coming across languages used this week as well, and then I come across this woman who they talk about Palestine. History of Palestine was translated into Ghana in the 60s, in Kuma in days, you know. And you see those days there was a whole lot of translations in Ghana, not just that serious translations. She make mention about imagining this time some books like Tolstoy and things, or some interesting books by her being translated into Ghana by this time. That development had continued, you know, if we are not giving it up and kept working hard on those issues that were very relevant to our development and our survival. So, again, you can see, I come across another one Uganda presidential aspirant. His political campaign is if he come into power, he will make sure they kill the Kiswahili, no more Kiswahili. They go French will be the official language like that. It's going to be French throughout because around him you see a lot of people who speak French as well. So the confusion come before called French is more international. That's how they go do they voting in. So I think we get a lot of work to do about our language, you know, the language aspect of it, to impress on our people about the importance of language and where we are right now. Right now on this platform, they speak of this language again, because it's the most common amongst us. But
that's the irony of it all.
Yeah,
that's the whole irony of it, and that's why England, even though you just mentioned that they, you know, it's diminished or whatever, they still continue to reap dividends through the use of that their language that we still find ourselves speaking.
Their language, man, it's still there. They claim it. It gives them some kind of edge over all of us about who important they be. Everywhere you go, English is spoken, so it gives them some kind of importance. Yeah, they're important. They really claim it. And it's on pride. So we Rastafari, we're proud too because we know our history, you know. But there's not enough Africans we really hold on to their heritage like that, to their pride about. They don't really check it in that sense that language and things really matter. Some really give it up, you know. Some they won't talk about language like this Ugandan man. He won't be president. Let's see what they talk about. We get another one right there in Ghana. They call him Ayariga. People keep telling us Nigerians must go and things like that. You see? Yeah, but they won't be president. How can we have people like that around us who so they dare to tell us they won't be president as well? How are they brave?
Speaking of Nigeria, though, Dre, there's this project Almoye, right? And they tried to use, I think it was Igbo, as the language of instruction for a school. It was a project that they did, and they actually came to realize said children were able to learn faster. And it goes back to that same point that I made earlier because processes. So okay, said photosynthesis Afina, what would I tell me? Photosynthesis. I forgot me where the crowd and some of them figure out what it means. Any idea? But Igbo nakasa straight what photosynthesis means. What I mentioned, Osha tree language, I was structure. It said, your Casabia, Obia Obube, your friend is saying, Obebu4, Obia Okunsu, your friend is saying, Insukofo, Obia Ochabe, your friend is saying, Obecha4. That type of, we can use that easily. Create a structure for instructing our children in school. We just said, Prof. Bitmiaka more about this for us, right? But this is the point I couldn't cover everything, but I just wanted to bring this to our attention. You said, even in school, if we are able to use our local language as a medium of instruction, and it's not impossible, it's very possible, because Ethiopia has Amharic as a national language. What would that make sense? And then maybe because of international relations, you have English running alongside it. But it's possible to instruct children in Amharic and have them be way smarter because they break things down faster. Funny say, it's a computer. Nothing a private computer, no need the idea. Nothing they also make sure on the call. Let me say if you or something, whatever we used to call it. No. Right? Rather than adopt the word computer into the diction, with the years going by, computer or however we mention it, it becomes part of the three languages that are now Doc Ekana, right? Because bucket, ebedani bokiti, and stuff like that. So our language doesn't grow. Instead of among ourselves, it's okay to borrow and all of that. But now our language is becoming enslaved by other languages, to the point where the words, for example, become confused with original tree words. It's a document, a tool, for instance. I never knew. I always thought say a tree word, So yes, it's another area I was saying. Language can actually be used effectively in schools. Everything. That's one thing I learned from training as an interpreter. Everything has an interpretation. Everything. If it doesn't, that's when you go in and borrow from the source of wherever that thing is coming from. And even then, you can give it your own name. If you give a Jamba, now over the generation, no about the standard term for computer. Give thanks. Me pacho bro mami.
This is a but I did not say near my using modern balance. In one share the three names for Sanimo in say a computer, say AI, say they
wow.
But yeah. Chemistry terms now, but as well, very, very important because Ethiopia, Oman, if I say, national language, right? And English is widely spoken in Ethiopia, but they chose an African language to be. Actually, Ethiopia has more than one national language. I think they have 3 national languages. American, 2. I think Tigrinya is one. I don't remember the third one, maybe Oromo or something. Right? So, but I remember, years ago when Mahama first came as a president and Professor Nana Jane was the Minister of Education. And she made a beautiful proposal which I thought was so great that the whole Ghana, from kindergarten through 3rd grade, every area should teach in the local language
of the area.
Master, I said the way the people jumped on the woman, say, why? You want me to at least unplug from the
world, the international, always the go-to nonsense.
Yeah, but the woman never say the kids cannot learn English. She said, as a medium of instruction, let us begin from kindergarten to 3rd grade in the African language.
No, because you can even use the tree to teach English.
Ascaris, Ascari brothers and sisters who love to advocate anything European, say, oh, the woman, as if she didn't know what she was talking about, right? She won't mislead the people and things. So I remember, I met an Ethiopian elder some years ago, and we were talking about this whole thing about language. And he made a point where I forever thought about it. He said, one of the big mishaps that African countries did upon gaining so-called independence was to adopt the Latin script, where we already had a script in Africa that we could have tailored our language to. Right? For instance, if we take what is known in Ethiopia as the Fidel, then it's just an alphabetical system. We don't need a Latin alphabetical system to express our language. We could have tailored our languages to a script that is already in existence, an African script that is already existent, such as the Fidel. But as you and I know, one of the things is that when we tailor our African language to this Latin script, then we have to teach children that both C and K stand for the same sound, which is
Radio culture.
It is confusion. African language, we already catered for that already. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, give thanks.
Yeah, where Mama Kaya said this guy who was, and this is the same famous guy from St. Peter's who rebelled against eating cake with the capitalist Senate, right? But this same guy of Ghana extraction was caught in a heated argument with the tree master who was saying, he said, "You does not start any word in tree." Guess guy said, "Nah, you the start word for tree." He said, but so you know the way make the tree people, tree speaking people talk first. You say, nah, you the start word for tree. So, okay, give us an example. He said, "Uya And I remember Mr. Dan being very, very offended and all that. But, the tree has its own, set of letters and all that. Tree has a different number of ways. But let me ask you, though, Prof, don't you think, sir, because I've heard some of the discussions about that, and I've heard it being said that the other alphabetical systems are maybe a bit more complex, versus 23 or 26 or whatever letters, you're learning about 150 different characters, and so on.
Yeah. True. But the thing is, let's not forget that this same, there is a classification of languages. And if you look at languages, for instance, we have the Kwa group of languages, which would be said to all belong to the same family. And we will have the Niger Congo belonging to the same family, etc., etc. So these languages, no matter the kind of characters, the number of characters in those languages are more closer together than they are than to a European language such as Latin. So the benefits of using an alphabetical system that is African far outweighs the adoption of a Latin script, which, as we pointed out, has many inadequacies when it comes to how we are tailoring our African languages to those scripts. So yeah, there may be more characters, but who's scared of learning characters, right? We never complain.
If you could learn a whole language,
absolutely,
we can definitely learn characters. All right, don't give thanks.
Yes, sir.
Radio culture. Radio culture.
yourself. Yeah, that's your. Jump it up at Charlie. Yeah, that's it for this one, Charlie. Thank you, lovely. And all the reasonings, prompts. Rasa Jete, need Charlie, good vibes. Good reasonings. Couple things we might notice where I think say. You said that letting me talk about the processes.
Yeah.
Charlie, that one be serious to me for think about, how that they affect a lot of people because of that they go say they're not good students.
Mm-hmm.
Because they see the classroom and the struggle over some word where maybe because somebody meaning in the work with. But that brings me to this other point that the meaning of language will be tricky sometimes, because if we take language is what we're actually doing, what we're speaking, what we're saying, those actual expressions. But I think and this ties into the idea of culture too. This whole thing they talk about how we be, how we live. That's what language be. So it's sort of an expression. So I think if you start thinking more about how do we understand language itself? Not how do we understand a language or languages.
Yes.
But the concept of what is language.
Exactly.
And because you say, maybe they have some meaning, and not maybe, definitely, they have a meaning where, this one way they train us with. They put us for some boxes that we look at, I think, like two-dimensional, Say something you speak, and something they take identify you, like where you come from, and all that. Just like how you had them the reason just now, you and Prof were talking, our ancestors didn't look at culture in a more creative way. We take things, we absorb things, we push things out, we do things. But these people, they come freeze us. Say, this is your identity, this is your name, this is your tribe, this is your this, And same with the language. Language has been tied into this colonization process, seriously, So I think that we have to think a lot more about how do we understand language itself. That's what I did think, but I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Give time.
Like everything they say,
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, all right. Give time. So the meaning of language be very, 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 very important, right? Because it sets parameters. And again, like I said, our ancestors, they were very open to what language meant. Let me put it that way. And this is what I mean. If you look at how language is defined, right? Let's take language as a universal communication medium, or language as even as a hidden esoteric medium, because it could also be that, right? That this is why you could go to Ahimfie and then you hear the drums and you think that they are creating music for dance. No, they're saying something that you probably do not understand, right? Recently, I posted something on my Facebook. It was this dancer from the Dominican Republic, thereabouts, right? And it was a drum and dance session thing. And this was, this is clearly a traditional had been exported from Africa. Drum, dancer, communication. What the drummer is drumming is communicating something to the dancer. When the dancer gets on the floor, she makes moves that says something to the drummer. It's the same thing in Ghana. You're watching your bucket is say, you better be careful, because sometimes the move you are saying, you are telling the people drumming, say, drum well, drum well, drum well. I'll give you a bottle of drink, or I'll give you something. I'll give you 200 cedis or whatever. I'll give you something, right? And this is something that happens. Somebody, a dancer, especially if you don't know the drummers. Let's say what could be and they're watching it, and you will be seeing the The first thing you do as a dancer, and I'm speaking as a trained dondologist also, so I know what I'm saying. But the first thing you're doing is you are begging permission from the drummers, because if they stop drumming, it's an embarrassment for you. So the first thing, you thank the drummers for accommodating you, and then sometimes, as the case may be, you will promise them something through gesture. And once they get that gesture, they will do their best. They will play to their maximum, and then you also exhibit your skills. When you finish, you go and see them behind the scenes, and you give them what you promised them. Nobody sees that, but that's language right there. There's this famous story about Swedro Brass Band, and there's this story. So they have a certain sig tune, like an outro of sorts. They will come to your event. They will play everything. You can task them to play for 10 hours. They will play. Once the leader plays that sig tune, it's an outro. Nobody is touching the instrument anymore. And we used to actually make fun of that. Those of us who grew up in Sweden, the tune goes like, and it's a call and response. The leader will, with the trumpet, will go pa 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 banana, and then the rest of them will go the same thing. Dun, 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 dun. Everybody puts that thing down. They're gone. Right? The leader will say, Manipa beya noaye, and then all of them will respond, Manipa beya noaye. Then they'll just put everything down. Language. Right? So understanding language is way beyond just words. If you take it as words, the way you arrange the words matter. Right? In Ghana, you can say no, no, no. You say no 3 times, but it means something. The man is drinking water. No, no, no. You know what I'm saying? So language is such a very unique and at the same time very what's the word? Dynamic element that, you know, we forever remain students of language. I don't think we have the whole picture yet. But you are right. Our ancestors definitely had more to language than maybe what we have been trained to do. Otherwise, they wouldn't have created levels of the language. And this is what I mean by levels. The drum language. When you go to the way they speak is different. All day until the more patch and say. And so that now be the year catcher will know. Right? And then and then we have grammar and kasa, whereby on the street you hear people saying in toes because we borrowed it from tomatoes. But if you go to a real speaker of the language, grammar speaker of the language, Obeka said denture moro, which is what we used to call tomatoes before we borrowed in toes. So in toes is not even tree. Denture moro. So language, I'm sure that our ancestors created something that they left for us to build on. And of course, as the world develops, things come in which the language has to accommodate.
Yeah, so the approach to language, again, the concept of language was more like we're creating something.
Yes,
right?
It's like an artist like with a canvas.
We shape out circumstances, the way to move us, pressure, we put some pressure on it, turn it around. But we have to have that kind of mindset in terms of how we be.
Yes.
And like Jamali, I agree with you so much about how it is a thing we would do, But I think so when we start think of it like that, we go fit. With all these things we talk, we go place them in a way where it go benefit us.
Absolutely. And I think that the imagery. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, basically, something I think say it'd be worth avoiding. The important say we go try to avoid. He say we go limit our understanding of language. Because like you're saying, they had a way of the understanding of language, which is like more expansive. I'm just tying it back into some of what you the Prophet talked a few moments ago, where you talk about how the Prophet was emphasizing over and over too. They were open; they didn't have a problem with absorbing what was happening around them, and that's the nature of language. So the idea of pitching is very, very much along those lines. Where that one we don't say we hear something. If you freeze pitching like that. You go hear another word for inside. Just like I would go here for even the regular genius side. Yeah. Right? But the kitchen be like a place where things be more dynamic. But I think that's an expression of language right there. All these other languages, a lot of languages where they be like official languages with English. One time it was pidgin. It still is pidgin. It's mixed up. People they throw things inside. But right now they have some kind of foundation for it, So we will be open to this. Language is a thing we for use, we for live, versus something we for showcase.
Absolutely.
What I mean? Yes.
And I think the imagery is also very important. The imagery of language, right? Because language, especially in Akan, for instance, is descriptive. right? Kwedu bofo. You're describing something, or bokwedu. It's in a friend of kwedu bofo no. Won't that be a dance before will be a dance here. It's descriptive, right? So the imagery is very important. This is why I'm surprised that words like Mibroni, but again, I'm not surprised because we know how this all this happened. But how words like that were able to creep into the language, right? Because up to a point, they'll start describing Broni as Obia and effect, the color, no man and effect, and those women, right? Until then we imbibe that, and then we come up with Mibroni, you know, and then we accept that without probing it too much, passing it through too many filters in the mind. It just passes through that one filter, if any, and then we Broni, and we're just there on the street going with that, you know. But again, that also shows the importance of the arts, right? Arts and culture, but the arts in all of this, because the arts is language. Paintings, a language. Sculpture, a language. The masks that they stole and took to England now, how dare them? Ultimately, for there will be fear. The work catcher is a main farm out because we need facilities are what they be saying. And Kwesi Eswuon say, "Seven." You're trying to say the crap. So
what they're doing is a language thing. It's been said, and so we have to deal with it. It's language right there. You see, the meaning of language there moves beyond the words.
Yes, and I'm saying
that you're putting something there, right?
Yes, and I'm using the masks as an example, Rasta, because
very good.
Almost many times we hear say African languages were not documented. That's false. I'm sure Doc will back me up all the way on this. Because the mask needs to hold some mask, no, it's saying 2,000 volumes. Plus more. What would have made generation after generation? That mask represents a whole lot to them. This is why, because of ABS, that mask, one thing, you know, Obi did not get 200 ma, Obia mefa. What would have made there's morality because that mask now represents everything that the Bible tells you and more. That's language. When somebody paints a picture, it's language. It's left to you to interpret it. Osha picture now, maybe a naked woman, but to be so sure I didn't know a river, right? Nature, trees, and all of these things. That's language. And that's why I'm saying that I agree with you when 7 fireside. When you say the ancestors didn't just want to create a medium of communication. They left more than that. Right? Because and yes, I come on back and find Chirasamasi. And can yes, I can even say, oh, Tobo, instead of saying you train or pay. You know. So I agree with you. Language is powerful like that. It's not just a medium of communication, it's also a legacy. I was saying year contributed to that legacy now. Yes, we're passing it on. We make sure that it's not bastardized to the point say you better adopt a computer. Instead, you better create another word to represent computer.
Radio, culture, online.
Nothing coming quickly.
Absolutely, I think so.
I don't know, give thanks for the reason. As someone can present me my example, Baako Kakra. You know, don't go for Mali and Burkina Faso. I know, we know, when it comes to astronomy, the whole world, nobody fit even come close. And this idea of using mask, right? So there's a celebration which they have called the CD celebration, which they have every 60 years. And that 60 years represents the cycle of Sirius B around Sirius A, which is a 3-star system, which is very important in Dogon cosmology. So anytime they have the festival, they erect this pole on which there's a mask. So, you know, and they erect this in a specific location, right? Just as, you know, we may have like a in Samapo or something in Ghana or something like that. you know.
Yeah.
So they have the emission of this max in a specific location every 60 years. Now, the knowledge that they have in relation to astronomy is very, very ancient, and this is one of the ways that we know this, because when Babylon tried to look
So at least we know what it is. Go on.
it's here, but I'm broke you know, make them know that, well, is that when they went to this particular place and they looked at the mats that were erected, there were at least 12 which were still standing. And there were many which had crumbled over years. So even when you consider the 12 that were still standing, that means that the Dogon people had had this knowledge for at least 700 years. And this is knowledge that the Europeans came into less than 150 years ago. Right? In fact, very recently in historical terms. So even when we count the 12, we are looking at over 700. And there were many other masks that was visible and crumbled over years. So even if we add another 10 or 12, which means the Dogon have had this knowledge for at least 1,500 years. Why am I bringing this point in? This is the ancestors communicating to us without verbal language. They are communicating time and knowledge in the erection of mass.
Yeah.
So, language is not limited to what is spoken. Language is what is spoken, but it is also other forms of communication. Gesture, right? Visual associations. We have things like a decry symbol, right? You take a decry symbol, you can look at a symbol and know the meaning without speaking a word, right? Even Kete cloth, you take the cloth, every cloth has a particular meaning behind it.
Exactly.
And so if language was limited to only verbal communication, then people who don't have that, I would say, the ability to communicate verbally would be limited.
Exactly.
But no, there are other forms of communication. Language is not limited to just the verbal, right? So give thanks to the item for that.
Absolutely. 100%. And even things like the town crier, right? When we were growing up, there was no social media, there was no even radio set, TV set. Maybe everybody has some way you will fit to, but we had the town crier where he would come with his gong.
The town crier, near friends,
they will buffle. Obodero.
Yes.
Eja Obodero.
When they say town crier.
Who's that? Pepe, they will buffle. Eja Obodero. And I will say about Mali so crap so far that title no. Osha, tough gong there. So they will now so that's no can you.
Okay, but
Pepe. That is a very, very important symbol. A symbol of a major symbol of communication. Nana sorry na Osma say yamebo de so biambra menjuma. That's the order of the day. It means agenda na ni asset na no. Yekodo anase ko yekotin sunimu anase yekoye bibisa ebe benefit ye nyina. That was the thing. And then also there are the other forms. As I said, ohine eti honom naso or some movie now may refer to acoustica movie. No, we did a scene like that. Ohine no eti ho, right? But there's ohina kasa no eti ho no. Or he has his own issues. Or will be a obetini ababe you see language to disrespect him. I will beg him. right? And so there was this scene, nipa ne buy no, why is a village drunk near the obey, but asana also. But you say according so not say whatever he's drunk, all these things. But the elders in the palace, no, they were shut. I didn't call yes, sir. Because asana also no, or they can't say much or in the Unyobia, asem na abantra, unyobia, and now the Tihonum san. And all this is communicated in dance. It's language there, a whole spectrum, whole spectrum. Some of which I believe say in the future crap we never discover. Say, oh, this was actually language also. Because come to think of it, I've heard people saying, I've heard herbalists saying, or a foam sokoti a draw, or name a draw or koti. Or do a form honma, a drone friend, a body D. So to those who have ears open now, there's even communication between plants as well. A drone or catcher is a ment, Miss Abri, call exana waba, emre, a drone yatimi anaju, call no waba anaju, no abete, oba, sabra, bedamasi, those type of things. Hey, me, I don't get that year. So those way they say, we can only give them the benefit of the doubt. But there are certain things we pry, we research, we find alternative narratives to those type of things. And we see, now these people are not playing. Because we hear it from more than one source, say, yes, the herbs actually speak back to them. And all of that. It's even beyond our day-to-day communication. Because we can even extend it to all these other forms. But today, let's keep it on, say, our regular way now. How do we even use that to improve our chances of reuniting as a people? Because once we identify that we speak the same language, then maybe we can even use that tribalism thing, to our advantage. Because now we speak in the same language. Versus we don't speak any language. I speak the slave master's language, and my brother speaks the other slave master's language. So when I get to Togo, he's not my brother anymore because we can't speak together.
How you feel say we get to Togo and then create something together?
Of course. Why is it that Togo speaks Ewe? Togo speaks Ewe. Ghana speaks Ewe. But I'm from Ghana and I cannot speak to my brother in Togo. Because I wasn't taught any Ewe. I was taught English.
But like you won't, like if you had to talk to somebody, I'm sure say you could create something.
I will of course find a way. But
yeah,
I didn't say what would I say? Exactly. And Americans say, even when in Nigeria, what I was saying would be different from how they would be speaking their pidgin, but we understood each other perfectly. All to the point, say, if you can't speak to somebody, how do you even know to express that desire to buy? It was a beautiful thing. It was. And to me, as bad as it sounds, when I was in Togo and Benin, more Togo than Benin, I felt very nervous. Very, very, very nervous. Once I touched Nigeria, it was like I was back in Ghana because of what? Language. I could tell somebody what I needed and expect a response from them. So that's how powerful language is. Yeah, man, give thanks.
Radio, culture.
Give thanks, my Lord. I hope me to have become a small for here.
Just why not?
As you put things across, it got me thinking in a very funny way. Particularly when you mention moving eastwards, getting to Togo, then Benin, Ewe Square Line. Now language can crush with you.
Mm-hmm.
Then it sent me back to another funny way, say, we used to have the tree side and we the Ibe people, then we bash them, and I before we those kind of funny things. So you got to a point of then some people go they hide out, because I before song.
Yeah. Yep.
And we got to some ways of you go talk say, then they go talk say, then I be people on here to police people.
Yeah.
Well, as you go experience for that angle from the tree side, you go realize say those small idea enclave for we the Ghana will become very comfortable in those environments.
I see.
That local language aspect of we.
I see. Very interesting angle.
But funny enough, when you say you step to Nigeria, now you can't get language. But in the long run, this is the same language with the bash say it can't come confused with. If I not be very cool with that, because this broken way we feel they do for there, if the white man in English now, we can turn them around to take survive.
Yes, so quick correction, Rasta. Quick one, I beg. I don't think I said that it can confuse me. On the contrary, my point is that it's a survival language. It is something that we created to survive. So I don't think a pigeon came to confuse me at all.
So based on the Oyibo language or the white man language, and
it's like somebody give you lemon and you make lemonade out of that, basically. If you come to the West, America, I say, they used to give the enslaved people pig intestines to eat, right? When they kill the pig, where they eat them, they would throw out the intestines. Black people took that and made food out of it. It's called chitlins. Right now, they sell it in supermarkets. White people go and buy it and eat it too. So the point I'm making is that whatever situation we find ourselves, we make the best out of it. You have been yanked from your continent. You've been put in a different continent, different place altogether. The next person you see was taken from another part of Africa, where even though you speak a similar language, you don't really speak the same exact language. Imagine say even within Ghana, they take an Ewe person, they take an Ashanti person, they take a North Dagbani person and put them together. It will take some time for them to be able to communicate. And through that process, they may find a medium which they can use to create a language that they can use. And that's what Pidgin is. That's what Patois is. So I don't think that it's confusing us at all. I think it's actually an incentive. I think we should pat ourselves on the shoulder for being able to take the slave masters' language that they gave us and making our own version of the language such that when we speak it, even the slave master whose language it is originally, would have to go and research what exactly we mean.
But then I know to say, or at the source, or I know to say, like the Togo Dems, them do they have some funny French where they break up in their own way.
Yes. That's the French patois for you. They too have their own, of course. It's there. Yes.
So basically, I feel say, this kind of common language with the final, it's so they come out of the slave masters, them our own way of dividing way, where we work out something out, or be so.
It be so to a large degree. And what I'm again saying is that let's not be under any illusion that we will ever speak one language. It will never happen, right? Let's not be under that illusion. Let's set realistic goals for ourselves. Africa as a continent. Before enslavement, we were not speaking one language. That's not the fact. How do we expect that we will all go back and say, okay, let's all go and as Africa, we're all going to speak Chi or Dagba? It's not going to happen. What we have to do is to make sure that in whatever pockets that we find ourselves as African, as Black people, we use that medium of language to our benefit. And if the case is that we have been, the slave masters' language have been forced on us, and that's what we know, and we can use that, I don't see why not. That's not the only thing we are using anyway. Through the years, we've been using some other things that the slave master has come up with. And we find out, okay, this is beneficial to our cause. We will use it because we also have contributed things that they are using. That's not strange at all. That's how humanity is supposed to progress anyhow. Right? But point I'm making is that we cannot be under the illusion that we are looking for one language. It's not going to happen. We have to make sure that we are using all the languages, including Pidgin and Patois, to our advantage. And let me share another small story with you. Dr. Ben Abdallah, may God rest his soul, of blessed memory recently, right? But he was my lecturer, and he was telling us a certain story about how during Rawlings' time, when he was Minister of Education and all that, they would go for international conferences and stuff like that, and they don't have to adjourn to take decisions, right? because they will be like, oh, okay, let's go. Because when they are sitting there and whispering, the people may even have a hot mic or whatever. But the whole night they can say, Charlie, I do also say catch Ujama or bedroom who say, Charlie, we do jam on penny crowd to the Bay moment. Okay. Within minutes, they will make the decision without having to get up and go nowhere because they're speaking a language that nobody understands right in front of them. You know. So language is a tool. I think we should use it just like the catalyst. It can be used for a negative purpose, like tribalism. Or it can be used for a positive reason, and I'm advocating that we use it for the positive reasons to bring advancement to our people.
Thanks, Nana. And it's quite very cool because, like, to say, I can say, Nina Bifra, Nadi Broken Crash and all over the tree too, they come in, then some of us are near the America crashing. So we see create them along the way. But then, no, then we have one for the airways that they say, they say, what can't say that, but you see the pineapple seller stop. So,
oh, imagine, see, there you go.
Yeah,
Oh, atoto the pineapple, to the seller, and then to again the stuff.
Exactly.
Imagine that.
So the language sell across in a funny way. And the aspect too, when you point out, say that we they use shenab and things. Seriously, if you go typical where they practice the tradition very well. If you go give even drinks and make we take pour libation stuff, they see a back with the shit. So I see say it be some places where it comes shallower, maybe get a back public face and one person here and but if you come typically say with the pray traditionally, a more photo, plain water, or if they drink a pure local brewed from the land where we did in a village, you know. Into members of the Samba, no, yes, that is physically what Tom say, you did the Sama here.
And what you might do be so Moria Sama walking because I also know some places or more a brosam.
Exactly.
No more tall libation. The other places are depending on the occasion. I've even seen urine being used for libation, depending on what the occasion is. Because sometimes if there's an unexplained death in the family, right? The people are upset. They are trying to get answers from. They have what they use. But now say ama marketing ploys about beton JH Hankies abaye as the choicest drink into whatever the situation is. They offer JH Hankies.
Thanks, my Lord. And this media make it to the best also.
Midasipa, we be before for class, so am I cry all together. As you say, every contributor be a different angle cry of the discussion, cry all together, and that's very, 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 very welcome. Thank you very much.
Quick one, no. J.H. Hankies,
I see.
Yeah, the whole. Listen, Togo, Benin.
I see.
Nigeria, Congo, Bebia. He drinks some of the buy and somehow more. So now we're more marketing and more convincing yourself.
Yeah, but down for cry.
Nadia Bako or more can say, who say you can't your friend is saying. Adia yedi boost ya in kasa.
Yes.
Now it makes perfect sense.
Yep.
I mean, water is the most ubiquitous
purest liquid.
Absolutely. And then the people who can tell us to use this Dutch snaps and things, they tell us that we should use drinks that have the characteristics of water. In other words, it is clear, right? It has those. So why use the
original day?
Exactly, Rasejo. Why don't you use the original water like as a purple?
Yeah, why use the fake one, the original one did it? And this is something that we we need to draw our people with our mind to. Because listen, at the bottom line, just imagine there's a family somewhere in the Netherlands right now.
Mm-hmm.
For generations,
yes,
they don't have. For generations, they don't have to work because the whole Africa, they use them a family brew.
Basically,
Pour libation onto their ancestors.
Basically.
So if you belong to J.H. Hankins or one of these snap or gin producing families, you don't need to wake up and say, I go search well. Because so long as somebody go pour libation for Africa, your family will get money.
Absolutely.
And your point where you make, when we talk about ancestors, we're not talking about only those who are 100 or 200 years old. We are talking from creation.
Yes.
All the way.
Yes.
So how about all the ancestors who lived before J.H. Hankins came with his
How about Obruman Kuma and Odapejan and Oson?
You know what I'm saying?
How about Nitaki Taria?
Are they taking the snap? We know there's only one liquid. Only one.
That's
liquid.
universal. That all of them definitely drank.
Right? I mean, look, there are local, dimensions. Like you talk, some areas they add a little millet to the water. Some they use a roast up. But the root is just water.
Yeah. Give thanks, cry. Give thanks, cry. And now, sir, we say no. Sorry, I say you cry a more $500 million from into we are growing local rice. In that same spirit, I think we should stop pouring libation with J.H. Hankins. And if anything at all, pour it with some of the locally produced things, at the very least. Right?
Let's make it accessible to everybody. Everybody could use water. Nobody need to go gather money to
basically, and I make us at the very least, no. Yes, we don't say one sister no Sajiam. That's a by force Oberman in San. At least Manikasa Preko or something like that. But that said also, what noticing an answer says, some way I see from my ancestors. No, your friend is spirits. These things are called spirits. Now, Mamma Chuma and Sansi Bibiso and Sanny Bekono. When him said, we called Cape Coast Castle some time ago, and then there was this thing over there, this guy over there, who they have some shrine inside the castle. They are pouring libation to and all of that, and claiming say a bosom. And Nana, how do we have a bosom inside of the castle which sat down there and watched 400 years of the enslavement of its people? Now, and there, yes, Sankonko Sheikh J.H. Hankins and Sankonko Guso. I don't understand. I'm just saying.
Yeah, Jenkins has him out there, and obviously people get together. But look, Jenkins, we will push a penny forward and we will pour the libation, then put it demanded and expensive drinks. Absolutely. So, there we go. Now, how you give them that thing and they hold on to it, when you pour the people, and the ancestors when they drink their fish. We say quarter said they will throw for it down.
Radio culture.
That's a good point too.
Kind of issues every time when these things come up. But I think water, the significance of water, the liquid aspect of it and how the nature of it.
Yes.
That will work the symbol be.
And water as a living spirit, living neutral spirit. And not an intoxicating spirit that you don't know which effect it's going to have on your ancestors. Is it? For instance, why is it surprising that the so-called gods now they were supposed to defend the people could not defend them because they were drinking too much J.H. Hankins instead of water? And they know why they are giving you J.H. Hankins to give to your God. So you think it's by accident? No, I don't think it's by accident at all. I think it's designed to do exactly what it did. Right? And then for generations after generations, then we come to accept, okay, J.H. Hankins.
even the word alcohol, that's an Arabic word.
I see.
Which means flesh-eating spirit.
Oh.
Yeah. So if you look, if somebody they engage in heavy alcohol consumption, that person in flesh,
yes,
gets eaten. So that would be the thing, flesh-eating spirit.
Wow.
And you need to question these kind of things, but I think that the other thing is, which I think is also acceptable as we talk about, this is, I think in some constituencies, to use that word, a kind of fermented liquid is also acceptable. If it's like, whatever, millet.
In Seifu or something.
Yeah, that kind of thing. But not gin or schnapps or those kind of things. That came about as a result of European arrival
and me, I think say these things, the government can help set it right too. Now that they have a House of Chiefs, they can just gather the chiefs and make them understand certain things from all aspects, right? Right there from the money we spend on JH hankies all down to the actual impact that these things are having on the people. And then the chiefs will make a pronouncement or they'll change their ways. What I mean, say, JH hankies, finding the partner, find them, let them go bring money, and then you go bring water and pour the libation. That can offer JH hankies because you want to pour 3 drops on the ground and go drink the rest. That is some ancient nonsense which must stop.
The part where the chat people probably say, you go tell you say,
Bronisa.
So it be the same thing when they talk about Bruni.
Yeah. Empire, you know the most vexing part. Maybe a year and a bibisa. Okuna Fono, Okrani Sem, and Sapape B, a Bronisa, no sense of the Holland wax, Papa B class.
Radio culture.
JH Hankies plus Holland wax. Dumas, Papa, what else? I don't know. Okra for the neighbor. Meanwhile, the man have 2 wives. The other wife no have, JH hankies. He bring up you, or he bring some, they no go look himself. They eventually they do Dumas. Any JH hankies, someone. It's all about language, Nana. Or more attuning to some point, we don't wait on Moko. And they are running on autopilot.
Autopilot right now. And you have to watch it, man. Because autopilot can do. You have to be careful, man. You have to be conscious. Autopilot is good. Not to build a nation. And then this nation is building. We're very rich right now. We can make one and build our nation, man. It makes sense to build a nation, man.
I think we for feed our minds with the ideas, because if the language, the thing where they do to us is the true language. They put ideas for our mind where we see things a certain way. So we feed each other with other ideas, the ideas where we need. The ones where we talk about when we did together, for just the things we know say we need, not what they say we need,
Now, for instance, bosom, right? When they introduced Christianity, they made bosom be the thing where you never want to go near it at all. But over bosom, now we'll break it down, even the word itself now. Bosom, right? Twist the 2, you can't say, syllables in there, twist it around. Sombo, right? Bosom, sombo. You can't say maybe sombo, I trust in. A valuable, a sombo, Samadiwi, a sombo, Megudiwi, a sombo. Oh, damn it. And to bosom, they made it sound like say, a boar, some, almost some a boar, versus. Bibia a sumo mobo. What would that make sense? It's the same language, though. Until now, when over a period of time, I catch us, so we are saying there's something beyond maybe a which is all well and good. But you're stupid because when other people are accepting Jesus Christ as their personal savior and other things of that nature. Into true language no ankasakra you can be basic or faith now say oh some a boy versus say oh bibia a some bo. And they did this with the collaboration of some of our people. Let's not forget some of the people that we hail these days. The other day I was flipping to the pages of my Encyclopedia Africana. Sadly, some of the things are not credited some of these people with into more Encyclopedia Africana. But I'm like, really? Because somebody's in there because they brought some church to some part of Ghana and did whatnots and whatnots. What did that church do for the people? How did it contribute to debasing our language? Because that's where they started from. I'm not sure Bible. And there's this brother who also showed me some this in there. I wish I thought about this coming to show. There are certain parts of the Tree Bible. Okanya is completely different from the English Bible. The guy can have about 8 or 9 different examples. And when you read it, that's not what the Bible is. That's not what offer tree interpretation. No, not offer English there now. That's not really what they are saying. Until yes, some of our people were involved in this, in all of this, and they're from scholars, and they're more big titles, and you know what I'm saying. But at the base of it, at the end of it, as Seven Fireside said, it's very important that we know what definition we are putting on our languages. Having our own language is great, but if you have a language whose substance is defined by someone else's parameters, you are heading in the wrong direction. If bosom means worshiping stone versus being of value to me, it's up to me to research which of these two I'm going to ride with. Am I going to understand bosom as something of value, or am I going to understand bosom as the worship of stones, for example?
Nana, make a comment quickly. The fact is, bosom could never mean the worship of stones. Purely on even by the very fact that the action has never been anybody walking around worshiping any stone. Right? So it could never be. But let me draw also based on this your attention to some other something. So also within language is the introduction of concepts that did not exist in the African mind prior to European.
Interesting.
But let me give you an example. In African mind, there is nothing like Satan. There is no powerful being,
even close to God.
With God,
yes. We're like if God lose God small, like in the throne.
There is nothing like that.
Yeah.
There's absolutely nothing like that. So when the Europeans came, when they try to introduce this idea of Satan, this powerful being where he defeats go toe to toe with God and all this kind of things, there was nothing African mind like
equivalent,
that.
Yes.
The equivalent. So they say, okay, is there any scary creature or any creature who acts as a trickster in your language? So you feel like this. There was a forest monster, and this forest monster is known as Sasabonsam.
So this day, hunters speak about Sasabonsam. Yes.
Absolutely. But Sasabonsam is also a great, I would say, source of herbal medicine. It teach people herbal medicine. But at the same time, it acts as a trickster. It will give you the medicine.
They like to play tricks on people, as we've heard.
Absolutely. So they then say, okay, then if that is so, then we will use this as a bosam
to represent Lucifer.
Right. So now, generations later, when you ask somebody, what is the tree word for Satan? The first thing they will tell you, say,
Bonsam.
Now, this will be only in within that tree. The same thing they did for when you, and I'm hoping that other people could also share something similar. But the same thing they did among the Yoruba.
Mm-hmm.
They did it. So the Yoruba today, if you ask who is Satan, for any Yoruba way, you know that they go tell you Satan be Eshu. Eshu within the Yoruba pantheon is performing the exact same role as the Sasabosab, where Eshu is the guardian of the crossroads.
Mm-hmm.
So they go play tricks on you and show you different scenarios,
mm-hmm.
and then you go make your decision based on the best scenario.
Yeah.
So Eshu is a trickster. So because they couldn't find Satan within the Yoruba language, they also made Eshu the trickster, Satan, as they translate the Bible and that kind of thing. So today, this concept has now been introduced into our mind, into our way of thinking, that there is a Satan.
Mm-hmm.
And this Satan has now been given names as Bonsam and Eshu, things that were.
And Charlie, some church could take 1 week fight that Satan.
1 week, yeah, 1 week.
They come back again.
They bring canes and things to the church can't frame themselves in the name of Satan.
Yeah, so as we're talking about language, we should also look at what kind of concepts have been introduced into our language,
which should be expunged.
Absolutely, that should be expunged when we are talking about liberation. Give thanks.
Nice one. Yes, and this Bonsam thing. When you said Bonsam actually is a Yembrani, Kweku, Emrani, any Bonsam, right? So if in our thoughts, if in our ancestors, thinking, Bonsam ye evil, why on earth would they call a whole day after something that's evil? I didn't think because it would be a Kweku Bia Bonsam. Second, some company on Patra, and a Wednesday, and Kabepe baby, I'm a wako show. Yes, but the name Bonsam was never meant to be evil. It was never meant to be negative. Yes. Just to buttress the point you made, Empire.
True. And also the characteristics of the Wednesday born is what makes them
Bonsam.
And the appellation Bonsam.
Yes.
Right? Being of that.
Yes.
Trickster,
Yeah, they like to play pranks on people and all that. Because that's what we heard about Sister Bonsam. Obama, why you are wondering? Never copy baby for not doing one go kakra, nothing with jaw. But maybe within that experience, you may discover some herbs. It will take you to go past some place where you've never been there before or whatever. It was never. Or your Bonsam saw evil. I said go back to right? Or anything like that. And come to think of it, don't human beings do the same thing when we see other creatures? Sometimes we take them as pets and play around with them. So, I'm just saying.
True.
That's very serious. I've been thinking. Say I will cry and what be the name of the devil, and still I don't figure out. And it bring my mind to one of this when guys where they used to bash Christianity seriously. They call they name him body priests. They online most of the time. He posts some meme where some guy bore. Why the guy bore? I say some Christians they say they give them a life to Christ. Where them now see them give them a life. But as them they travel, them go get accident. Now them body can bash Satan. Meanwhile, the Satan so they don't give anything to them. So why don't we come blame the Satan when they don't give them a life? That is just some small joke I just pull out as we they talk this devil thing. But get to know the name of on
a serious note, I beg you, I engage you on this. Please help us find an ever Bible, right? And let's see how they describe the devil in there, Satan. Let's see the equivalent of Bonsam in ever. Please, let Bible. This is I will check with you on this. Make you help me with that research. I beg.
Go the old girl find that thing. I go find out for my own girl in there because they pray with me in Bible. Yes,
Sure.
Find that out and we will see.
Sure.
If times.
And I think it would be good to also, extend it
to other languages. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Because we were upon something was unique to the Akan speaking people, So if that succeeded, how did the other, dialects know? How did they do it?
I'm pretty sure they use the same day.
Yes.
100%.
Yes. But another trick I've seen that they used in other parts of the world is that they would then substitute it for the evil one, for instance, right? So, and Shokimi said, when we go in there, we will find out that there's no bonsam in there, but it's the description of an evil entity in those ways, And again, quick example again, this whole thing about the idea of the Satan and all of that. Doc, you are very right. Because I had a friend, again, from Iran, this guy, this time, from Iran. And this is in Australia, he heard somebody talking about, the gospel for the very first time in his life, like on the close on one-to-one basis like that, right? This was somebody we met when we were working together, working together. Japan, Kofi, and then we met this person who was trying to preach to us, and we were nice. We listened to this lady for a little bit and everything. When we started going, he asked me, he said, "Who is Sulifa?" I'm like, "What is Sulifa?" I said, "Yeah, the lady said Sulifa. Sulifa is this evil person." I said, "No, she didn't say Sulifa. He said Lucifer." But it's a completely new idea to my friend Korea, who doesn't know, like, what is Sulifa? First of all, who is Sulifa, and how dare he, like, who is this person? I never had any kind of. This guy is a Baha'i person, by the way. Baha'i faith. He doesn't know where that idea even comes from, But somehow we opened up to that kind of thing, and we just accepted, said, And Empire. I heard you say, bosom could never mean the worship of stone, but they push it that way. Because a bo is a bo, right? And some is worship. And they tried to make the point that our system was animist, right?
But check it out. Animism is, according to even their own definition, is not limited to worshiping stones. Animism is the idea that the spirit of God lives in every thing.
Yes.
That is, it could live in an animal. It could live
is that a revised definition for modern times, or is that what they use to colonize our minds? Because back in the day when we were in school, when they said something was animist, you were putting it among the most negative of concepts, right?
It is. No, that is the connotation. It has a negative connotation,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
No doubt about that. But in terms of defining it, it's not limited to, like, you go worship stone.
Yeah, of course not.
Also, they see, if I go pluck this leaf, the spirit of God did a leaf inside. So, and for, do certain things to let a leaf know, say, I come pluck.
Yeah.
So if it be true, say, you do worship stone, then why didn't you choose a name like Inframason? Because, the so-called animist also sees the spirit of God in there.
I would just say because now they find a convenient word that they can easily use to their advantage, right? Or it's a happy coincidence for them, is what I want to say, because they can actually take a word and work around that to confuse your mind and make sure, okay, bosom, and then there's a word bosom that they can use to back that up.
True, but I think say also, if we look at the etymology of the word, right, and come to the actual fact that it comes from esum bo, esum nipa bo, idea was sum yambo, right? That's bo no asum, as opposed to a bosom, because the bosom no. In case I said we can say bosom, but you can't bosom just a sum. Some people.
And now we assume the cross of Fiwa, Nana, a boar woman. Let's even expand that a little bit. You can say, Okoto idea, not the value, no. You send your canon. Idea way, ni boar, a saying. Oh, I'm sure.
Value our place you are there, no so no.
And only buono.
And only buono.
And to say, assume a buon pa. We are worshiping value, basically. Versus worshiping vanity,
Yeah.
which we have been led to do recently.
Absolutely abstract, you know. So I think that coming back to the animist point, you know, I mean, it's not a terminology that we want to embrace, because I think that that terminology is intentional, because the word animal, animist, are all from the same kind of root, right?
Yes.
And you know, and also to an extent, you know, animate, right? But at the same time, if we look at it from the point of view of animate, it means that we see things as being animated by the spirit of the supreme being.
Yes.
And that is not to a rock. Like, let's say, for instance, what we know about Ghana, you know, for instance, we know that certain places, the earth is what is valued. We know that certain places, the sea is what is valued. We know certain places, rivers. We know certain places, the wind. We know, etc., etc. So, the American culture I could see say, the rock worship is a more modern interpretation to align with the colonist,
A more mischievous agenda.
Absolutely. You know, as opposed to the actual meaning of the term.
Yeah. Give thanks.
Radio culture.
Before the other LDIC, the NIDA we'll ask if there are no other comments, and the presenter will give his final remarks, and then I will get them say, Sisia, I'm not for a penny, and better support. Wait, I'm going to talk for
Yo, and you're more than tough for Name said tough for the mechanic said, the Yina, contribute here, and no, they're tough for there will be a discussion will be a tough one, but just to sum it all up, I just want to say language a very powerful tool. Language a two-edged sword, right? We have established it can be means for mischievous and devious intentions like tribalism, and then unnecessary wars, and then people's parochial agendas. Maybe. Recently, I heard some ridiculous voices, even among some of the tribes, so-called tribes in Adianokrana. People even pry into Mame Hwaimba and stuff like that. That is ridiculous, and it can definitely be used for those nonsensical agenda. But at the same time, language is a very powerful tool. We can harness it in our fight for redemption as African people in all aspects. When we think about commerce and economics, the J.H. Henke's issue is a clear example. If Africa can disabuse its mind of whatever is foreign is better now, right, which has been imposed on us through language now, it is going to affect our commerce, because we start loving things that we ourselves produce. We start putting local rice over brony rice, because after all, with the local rice, if you can it will be considered organic, and you will pay more money for that, right? So then, if Yakasayet, that's it. The other day I was watching a video and I saw some people in. Your friend was saying, and were brown baby, and they had just cooked and they were eating. And I'm looking at the quality of food that these guys were eating, and these are people who would never say, "Oh, you're rich or you're what or whatever," but the quality of natural organic food that these people are just harvested from the farm that they are cooked and they were eating, and this is what they eat on a daily basis, right? Versus what somebody who lives in the west of food say, "Well, but sorry, I would eat McDonald's." With all due respect, but we want to make sure like all these things. So if we can disabuse our minds of sa bruni a day better through the use of language now, we can definitely go a long way. And with that, I want to challenge all of us. Let's start making a conscious effort to challenge the words that we are used to using. Let's look at some of those and see if they really convey the meanings that we want to put across. I want to give thanks for this opportunity to the Rastafari Council. I want to give a good commendation to my brother Ras Kofi Asante and the rest of the committee who put these things together. You guys are doing an amazing job. And yes, we do see what you're doing today, but I think that posterity will see with clearer lenses the work that people like you and Seven Fireside and everybody else on the committee, Russ, Ejo, everybody else is doing. So I want to thank you again for the opportunity to share my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Radio culture.
We give thanks to once and all, dear, to me by Chim and Nature. I'm saying, soon to be great, and the Alpha woman so the two and a more. See, I don't be asking. That's an essential. Now, you share your constitution, that the boss will be the constitution or the constitution of the team. We'll put out flyers and notification about the next reason. We give thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Rastafari.
Rastafari.